Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Nice to see you guys. I had a great weekend. Hope you did too. Obviously, sleep is a little bit weird when you've got the newborn, but you know, we're handling it, I think, like champs. It's nice. We've got my mother-in-law in town. She's helping out. Stephanie is being a total champion. She's the real MVP in all of this one. You know, up 2 or 3 times a night, feeding, taking care of little sweet Hazel, and I gotta give it up to my wife. She really is strong, and I'm glad to see it. I love having a sweet little redheaded libertarian baby. I'm enjoying it. Lots of challenges as we sort of, get ourselves into a new type of lifestyle. But I'm really looking forward to life as a father, and I look forward to sharing a lot of these stories about being a dad with you in the coming years. It's nice to be on the side of liberty. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, don't forget, click that like button if you haven't yet. We'd love to have you be a regular guest on the show. It's Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, and we'd love to have you be a regular guest, so click that follow button before you leave. Did Kermode Bear see over the weekend that I spent a little bit of time lovingly crafting something just for him, which I know that it's probably only going to be maybe even purchased by him? The Furries for Donald Trump shirt, now in stock. We're either going to sell 1 million of these things, or we're going to sell 1 of these things, maybe 0 of these things. I don't know. Kermode Bear, FYI, just for you, a beautiful Kermode Bear. Furries for Donald Trump. There you go, in the shop. And also, for those who are regular guests of the show, just so you know, we sat down and had a couple of great conversations this weekend with the 2 new shows that are coming to the For Liberty Network, and I'm very excited about the branding on the new shows. The titles of the new shows have been decided, and they're coming this fall to the For Liberty Network as we expand our shows. Yes. Today's going to be a great show. Unfortunately, we have to start with a little bit of bad news. This global stock markets are quivering after Japan's market took a tumble, and the NASDAQ and Dow futures are falling this morning before American markets open up. We're going to talk about that a little bit this morning at the top of the show. At 7:30 a.m. Central, we're going to speak to Maxim Lott about the Kamala momentum. Yes, it does appear as if there is a surge in support for Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump in recent nationwide polling. Maxim Lott will join us to discuss what that means at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. At 8 o'clock a.m. Central Time, we're going to speak to our friend Remzo Martinez about a series of riots in the United Kingdom against migrants, native or heritage Britons, taking to the streets in protest of violence done by migrants to the United Kingdom. We'll talk to Remzo Martinez this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, so you don't want to miss that one. It's nice to see all of our friends over here, 130 people joining us live over on rumble.com. Hi, friends. How many people do we have joining us over on X? I always like to follow over there as well. X has really been blowing up lately. It's nice to see 236 people joining us over on X.com this morning. Hey, guys. Do me a favor, click that heart button on the stream and then click repost and share it out to let other people know about the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty. We'd be very grateful for that. You don't want to see what's happening to crypto markets either, but as my good buddy David Winery is reminding us all over on X, he's tweeting and saying, don't ask about crypto, though it's nothing to lose 25% overnight. It does hurt. Yes, Bitcoin dipped below $50,000 a coin for the first time since February. Yes, it's not looking good out there for the traditional markets or for, I can't help it, Michael Scott, not my fault, for the traditional markets or for the crypto markets. However, as my good friend BX posted on X yesterday, she says, or last night, she said that she sure was glad that she went to Austin's gold company and bought gold from AP's gold company because she is a little bit safer today because of that. And don't forget, Courtney Conover is on Larry Sharp's show tonight. There you go. Nice. Thanks to Kermode Bear this morning, we have already hit $59.98 for unlocking today's bonus content. He bought 2 furries for Donald Trump shirts. So that means all we need is basically somebody just needs to donate $1. And we'll have hit our $60 goal for the day. Thank you very much for supporting the Wake Up America show with your purchases at forlibertyshop.com on the For Liberty Network. At 8:30 a.m. Central today, we're going to talk about some comments made by actor Vince Vaughn about how why Hollywood doesn't make any good R-rated movies anymore. I'd be curious to hear if you could guess why. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open at 573-319-1586. Aerosmith also announced this morning that they would be retiring. Yep, sadly, Steven Tyler has had a vocal injury that he is now unable to recover from. And they posted over on X.com that they are now shutting down their tour, and it is the end of the road for Aerosmith. I know it's crazy, 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 something, something. His daughter was in Lord of the Rings. Best thing he ever did. Okay, so real quick, before we start the show and get into the topics, I do want to let you know we are going to have a couple of prize giveaways today. So I ordered one of these Donald Trump album cover tees, which I ordered a size too small for me. It also has a really attractive For Liberty Shop Where Eagles Dare logo on the back of it. And we're going to be giving away these today to anybody who's interested. It is a size large. So if you're not interested in entering the prize drawing today, then that's okay. But maybe you can give it to a friend if you think that they would like it. It's a beautiful heather blue, large size Donald Trump album cover t-shirt. And you can enter in today by everybody who does a super chat today is going to be entered in to do for the prize drawing. So all you have to do is make at least one super chat or one Rumble rant today, and you'll be entered in to win the large shirt. And we're also going to do a gift giveaway to our monthly subscribers. So if you're a monthly supporter of the Wake Up America show in any way, even if you're subscribed to me on Instagram or on Twitter or anywhere, essentially, then you are automatically entered to win. And we're going to do some sticker giveaways today. So today is the day for lots of fun and lots of gifts. Let's give back. Quest Fanning He donated $1, which means we unlocked today's bonus content, and Quest Fanning is now entered to win in the prize drawings today. So if Quest, you are interested, of course, then I'll be happy to, if you're the only person who does a Rumble rant or a super chat, then you are the only one. Right now, Quest Fanning has a 100% chance to win the Donald Trump album cover tee. Okay? Okay. Let's talk about the news. A global sellout off the disappointing jobs report that dropped last week has spurred investors' fears that the Federal Reserve made a big mistake last week when they kept their interest rates unchanged, and that now our economy in the United States might be headed towards a recession. But the stock sell-off has been made worse by the volatility in the Japanese stock market. The Nikkei, Japan stocks confirmed that they have entered bear markets in Asia overnight. What is a bear market? Well, a 5% fall in the stock market is what's considered to be a pullback. A 10% fall in the stock market is what's considered to be a correction. A 20% fall in a market is what's considered to be a bear market. And a 30% fall or more is considered to be a crash. And if you hit a 50% fall in any stock market, then you are considered to be in a recession. So tracking global markets, Japan has entered a bear market. The U.S. market, the NASDAQ, has entered correction territory, so 10%. And the Indian market has not even reached pullback at this point. So if you're interested in following these stories and more, I highly recommend that you follow Jim Cramer over on CNBC and basically just do the opposite of what he has to say, right? Because what was it, just 2 or 3 days ago? I'm looking at Jim Cramer's predictions saying NASDAQ futures dropping. This is what he said on August 2nd. At 4:32 a.m., he says, NASDAQ futures dropping as if it's the end of the world. Memo to all, it isn't. Well, there you go. Basically, you can't go wrong with looking what Jim Cramer says to do and doing the opposite. 3 hours ago, he says, I do not want to call it over-exaggerated, but it would be more thoughtful if the decline were based more on basics and less emotion. Jim, how could somebody who is so bright in so many ways be so stupid? The economy, to a large extent, I mean, most of it has got to be about emotion. I mean, certainly the crypto markets are like that, and crypto markets are suffering as well, because why should the crypto markets track the stock markets? Now, this is going to be a story that you're going to have to track all day long. And to be fair, today's the day that a person like myself invests. Today's the day when a person like myself steps in and says, hey, a lot of these stocks are on sale. Find good companies that have good fundamentals, that have good cash flow, that I know aren't going away. And if their stock price has receded past a point that I think is reasonable, I step in and I buy some. But it's also a good reminder of why I've always been a big believer in gold. And I know that this could be considered a shameless plug, but the fact is I am really proud of the fact that I was able to help people like BX and people like Kermode Bear, who bought silver from my friends over at Preserve Gold. So I'm just going to say it, that if it's been something you're thinking about for a while, you probably need to at least get more information from my friends over at Preserve Gold. So I'm going to recommend that you text the word Liberty to them at 50505. You can do that today, right now. Text the word Liberty to 50505. Again, all you have to do is text the word Liberty to 50505. I'm the type of person who is, when everybody, there's a Warren Buffett quote, I think he says, when everyone is greedy, be afraid. When everyone is afraid, be greedy. And today is the day when everyone is afraid. So today is the day to be greedy. And when people are terrified about things like a crash in the real estate market, remember, these are opportunities, especially young people who don't own many assets or any assets. Like they're always looking for these kinds of opportunities to be able to get into the market. It's the older generations who don't like this kind of stuff, obviously, right? If they're trying to retire. But here's the facts. The facts are that these kinds of things tend to happen every couple of years. I got a video I'm going to play for you in just a moment. But I just want to remind you that if you just want to get more information about how to invest in gold and silver, I highly recommend that you get that gold and silver packet from our friends over at Preserve Gold. Text the word Liberty to 50505. Okay, cool. Let's get this clip that I wanted to play. This is kind of an old video, but Peter Lynch from Fidelity Investments on C-SPAN said this about a decade ago. Take a listen.
And history is the important thing you learn from. What you learn from history is the market goes down. It goes down a lot. The math is simple. There's been 93 years a century. This is easy to do. The market's had 50 declines of 10% or more. So 50 declines in 93 years. About once every 2 years, the market falls 10%. We call that a correction. That means that's a euphemism for losing a lot of money rapidly. But we call it a correction. And so 50 declines in 93 years, about once every 2 years, the market falls 10%. Of those 50 declines, 15 have been 25% or more. That's known as a bear market. We've had 15 declines in 93 years. So every 6 years, the market's going to have a 25% decline. That's all you need to know. You need to know the market's going to go down sometime. If you're not ready for that, you shouldn't own stocks. And it's good when it happens. If you like a stock at 14 and it goes to 6, that's great. You understand the company, you look at the balance sheet, and they're doing fine, and you're hoping to get to 22 with it. 14 to 22 is terrific. 6 to 22 is exceptional. So you take advantage of these declines. They're going to happen. No one knows when they're going to happen. It would be people tell you about it after the fact that they predicted it, but they predicted it 53 times. And so you can take advantage of the volatility in the market if you understand what you own.
There you go. If you understand what you own, you should be buying stocks that you believe in, that you trust. Me, myself, I'm the type of person who I tend to not invest in individual stocks. That said, I do own some Rumble because I believe in it, right? Not because I'm 100% convinced about the future of Rumble, although I do invest a lot of time and energy into Rumble. So I do think that I'm trying to help Rumble succeed by putting all of my energy and all of my time into helping grow my Rumble channel and to build my audience here on Rumble. So I do believe in Rumble. But nobody knows what the future is. Tech companies are always, coming up and going down. But I'm an activist investor to some extent when it comes to Rumble. I also invest directly into a company called 3M, with the famous tape manufacturer. And the reason why I invest in 3M is the reason why I invest in ETFs is because 3M has a really high dividend. And I typically only invest in stocks if I either deeply believe in the company or if they offer a really handsome dividend. So I'm the type of person who wants to be able to collect a paycheck quarterly based on my investments. And the nice thing about dividends is unless the companies cut the dividends, then you typically get paid. Even if the stock goes up, the stock goes down, you tend to make money. But what I do in order to sort of hedge my bets and to keep my risk a little bit minimized, obviously I already have gold in my portfolio, so I'm good there. But what I do is I invest in dividend-bearing ETFs, exchange-traded funds. And these ETFs are invested in, essentially each ETF can be invested in a bunch of different things. There's like a strategy for each ETF. But I will do, for example, an oil ETF that is XLE. And that's one of my biggest investments. And XLE invests in BP, and it invests in Chevron, and it invests in all of the major oil companies in the world. So if one of them goes down, and maybe even goes down by a lot, the other companies may not be as affected. And then I have healthcare ETFs. And that's really what I like to do, is because it spreads out the risk. And these ETFs pay dividends. You want to be careful when it comes to ETFs in one sense, because you want to be careful that if it's an actively managed fund, that the fees aren't too high, because a lot of your dividends can get eaten up in fees. So there are really good dividend-bearing ETFs that have low fees, and that's what you really want to be looking for. That's what I do. So it's up to you though, obviously. So let me know what you guys like. How do you like to invest? I'd love to hear your strategies. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, that's 573-319-1586. Kamala Harris's chance of winning has changed, according to Nate Silver over at 538. This is the chances of winning. Kamala Harris now edging Donald Trump 50.5% to 48.8%. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. still at 0.0%. But more of the polls that I'm reading show that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is taking more votes away from Donald Trump than he is from Kamala Harris. We're going to speak to Maxim Lott about that in a little bit less than 10 minutes. But I really love this clip that was played over the weekend on CNN, of all places. You got to love how they reacted to this. CNN sent an awkward white dude to a barber shop to ask black men about Kamala. And when they don't get the answers that they like, the host looks into the camera and calls them morons. Take a listen.
Is Kamala going to make you a little more likely or less likely to vote Democrat?
Well, hold on, first, Ray, hold on, Ray. Is Kamala black? Yes or no?
I'm going to let her speak on that. But to me, no.
Oh, is Kamala black? Yes or no?
I share that same view.
Wow, is Kamala black? Yes or no?
I heard she was. I heard she's half black and half Asian.
When I played that audio on my SiriusXM radio program on Thursday, many callers who self-identified as African American were quick to tell me that those men were the exception, not the rule. Some described them as low-information voters, no different than you'd find among whites.
Is Kamala going to make you?
Some of them you would describe as low information voters, no different than whites, says the CNN anchor. Now you see, they'll call Trump a racist for what he says about Kamala Harris's race, but then when the people of color don't say what CNN wants them, the white boys at CNN want them to say, they call them idiots. They call them low information. Then they have no use for them, right? I love this clip too. Of a back and forth between George Stephanopoulos and Byron Donalds.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There are a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue.
Sir, one second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
Well, it's okay if you're a black guy, except for CNN. They say that it's not okay. It's only okay to question someone's racial identity if you are of the right color and of the right political party. The most important thing, though, of course, is the letter after your name.
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people.
Money Megatron got the comment of the hour here. George telling a black man who's black. Exactly. Thank you. Oh, man, I got so much good stuff for you guys today. We're going to talk about it, but Maxim Lott is going to join us here. Enjoy your guys' bonus content that you've already unlocked because you're amazing and support the Wake Up America show. Okay. This week's theme, you get to check it out right now. Sorry, it's a little early. Be right back on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Wake Up America show looks at some of the most.
The Cantina crew, this is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word.
Thank God our president is in good shape, in good health, and is ready to lead in our second term.
The president is in good health. He's very active. You see it for yourself with your own eyes.
Joe Biden is going to be fine. And let me tell you something. I work with Joe Biden every day. The work that under Joe Biden's leadership our administration has accomplished is transformative.
I see his vigor, I see his energy, I see his passion.
So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
Not debate, but discuss it with him. He's right there.
Because Joe Biden is very much alive and running for re-election.
Joe Biden, very much alive and running for re-election, says Kamala Harris. Ooh, cringe, cringe, cringe. Good morning, good morning. Rise and freedom. Austin Peterson here on the Wake Up America show. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Click that like button. If today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, you should be a regular guest. The show's Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's a 2-hour live talk show with tons of great guests, content, clips. We're always having a lot of fun and making friends over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. So click the follow button before you leave today and come back and join us again tomorrow. Well, Joe Biden, fit as a fiddle. They said for weeks and weeks and months, everything's okay, nothing to see here, until, of course, his poll numbers were so terrible that he got the Julius Caesar treatment. It just wasn't on the Ides of March. Joining us now to discuss the polls and how the momentum for Kamala Harris seems to be continuing to increase. It's a man who lost a lot of money on a bet on that one. Joining us live now is a good friend of the show, Maxim Lott, here on the show. Good morning, Maxim. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Hey, speaking of losing money, are you getting double or triple hit this morning on like crypto and the stocks this morning, Max? Is 2024 your bad year for Max in his pocketbook?
Apparently, I do own some crypto. So yes, I'm sure that's not doing well. But yeah, so I was on this show like 2 weeks ago. I said, the bettors say Biden will drop out, but here are some reasons I think he won't and why I'm betting against it. And they were right and I was wrong. So the lesson is, listen to the markets rather than any particular pundit, even if you think the pundit's good and they are betting their own money. So the market aggregates it all and it has a good track record.
Well, it's like craps, somebody's got to bet the other side. Somebody's got to fade you, you've got to have somebody who's going to say, oh, I'll take that bet, for example. So, sorry to hear about your loss, but Maxim, let's talk a little bit about the numbers in terms of polling. I'm looking at 538 this morning, Nate Silvers, which tends to be one of the better predictors overall of the presidential race. And in looking at Kamala versus Trump, it seems as if the momentum that she has been building, which is strange because she hasn't done an interview, she hasn't sat down with the press, no town halls or anything like that. Somehow, magically, she has soared into the lead, a tight lead with Donald Trump. What's the story?
Yeah, so the looking at the betting odds before Biden dropped out, they said if she were the nominee, she'd have between like a 30 and 40% chance of becoming the president. And that's higher now. And it seems like what the bettors did not expect was that the Democratic Party rallied around her so quickly, and so did the media. And they immediately went from, is Biden fit to run to, here's why Kamala is cool. No, there was no dissection of her previous policy stances or her drawbacks, or it was just like, she's great. This is the person who can beat Trump. And almost everyone rallied around her. That wasn't fully expected. That has helped her. There's been less dissension among the Democratic ranks than there was for Biden. So yeah, she's stronger than she had originally looked. And right now the bettors, they say Trump 51% chance, Kamala Harris 45% chance. So it's close.
Big state that everybody is looking at this year, which is the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, is one where Trump is currently in the lead right now. But there's a catch. What's the catch?
Yeah, so Trump is leading in the polls, but the bettors say it's more likely to go to Kamala Harris. And that's probably because they also say she's likely to pick Shapiro as her vice presidential candidate. And he's the governor of Pennsylvania. He's popular. I think if she doesn't pick him, it might flip back into Trump's column, according to the bettors. But yeah, we'll see.
Talk to me a little bit about Kamala's past. Now, I know that I'm looking at your breakdown. She has taken some pretty radical previous positions, like calling to ban fracking, but she has been backing away on a lot of those positions in recent months. Have you noticed? Or recent weeks?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She has. Yeah, on pretty much all the really toxic far left things like banning fracking. So I guess we'll see if voters buy that, or if, for example, on the fracking thing, her quote, which is on video, is something like, "I would absolutely ban fracking." So if you see that on a TV ad, it doesn't look great for her. One interesting thing, I'm a producer with John Stossel. In 2020, we did a video adding up all the Democratic candidates' spending proposals. And Kamala Harris came out in first. She wanted like $4 trillion in new spending between Medicare for all and green energy, all this stuff, and even ahead of Bernie Sanders. And that lines up also with, in 2019, GovTrack rated her the most liberal senator. That's, again, even ahead of Bernie Sanders, just in terms of how much she worked with Republicans, or rather didn't work with them, and how radical the bills she sponsored were.
Now, the chat is bringing up the question surrounding Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, his Jewish heritage in a year when the Democratic base is looking at Israel with disdain. Could there be some negatives from the progressive base of the Democratic Party for a Shapiro pick?
There certainly could be. However, personally, I think he would be her best pick because Pennsylvania is so critical this election. Nate Silver's model gives Pennsylvania a 35% chance of being the tipping point state. Of if there's one state that it depends on, it'll be Pennsylvania. So if she has the governor on her ticket and he has 50-60% approval rating, which is very high in this economy, she's much more likely to win it. And so I think that alone makes it worth it, even if she loses a bunch of left-wing radicals in New York City and San Francisco.
Talk to me about the popular vote versus the electoral college, Maxim, because there doesn't seem to be any situation, at least in the foreseeable future, where a Republican candidate is likely to win the popular vote. The only chance that Republicans have is to preserve and protect the electoral college. But I mean, is America, do you think, fundamentally just transformed into a nation where Republicans can only really hang their hat on an electoral college strategy? Do you foresee any strategy where Republicans could ever win a popular vote again based on the demographics of this country?
If the Democrats run a senile person, maybe, when it looked like they were going to, the betting odds did for a moment have Trump above 50% chance of winning the popular vote. But now he's back down to 30% chance. It could happen, but in general, no. Trump and the Republicans are dependent on the popular vote. And I think, yeah, the Democrats, I think just the population centers, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, it's just so many blue votes there that they need these swing states to carry them.
And speaking of Maxim Lott, he is the publisher of the website Maximum Truth. He also is co-founder of a website called electionbettingodds.com. And I'm speaking to him right now about Kamala Harris taking the lead in national and important state polls. Maxim, you and I, we have worked together in the mainstream media, and we've also both dabbled in the alternative media as well. How much would you place in terms of the role of the media in helping Kamala Harris to launch to become the front runner in the polls, in terms of the industry that we play in and that we, make our coin from to lose in the stock market and it and in crypto? How much would you say the media is responsible for Kamala Harris's surge?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think if you had a media that was not politically aligned, the narrative would be so different. It would be she's unpopular. Why is she unpopular? She's had all these radical stances. She is backtracking, but framing it that way rather than this, oh, she's appealing to millennials, which the polling barely shows. There's all these narratives. And it was amazing watching the press turn on a dime where they'd been all pro-Biden, he's sharp as a tack up until the debate. And then the debate happened and they realized, oh, we're going to lose with this guy. And it was wall to wall, like, he should drop out, he should drop out. As soon as he did, it was, Kamala, sharp as a tack, best thing you've ever seen. So I think that's making a huge difference. I think if it were like just looking at policies or even just like gaffe analysis, she would not have gained like she has.
Maxim, you're kind of like me. You and I, we used to live in New York City. You sort of, during the pandemic, decided to make your way out in the country. And there are good economic reasons for doing so, but also the liberal cities have turned into, dangerous, nightmarish, totalitarian hellholes to a large extent. American cities are by and large failing. Rust Belt cities have lost jobs that are probably never going to come back. I mean, people like yourself and myself have been advocating for free market ideas ever since we were old enough to get involved in politics or in media. I'm curious what you think about this new right-wing populism advanced by characters like J.D. Vance, who I think, kind of like Bernie Sanders, makes a lot of really good points, but their solutions tend to be fairly similar, right? Industrial policy, tariffs, things like that. How do you feel about the direction that the Republican Party has been taking in recent years with the rise of this new right-wing populism that is very deeply opposed to the ideas that you and I deeply believe in?
Yeah, I suspect I generally agree with you on that. Vance, for example, what I like about him, he's very smart. Everyone who meets him says, he's smart. And I read his book when it came out, and it was a good analysis of the culture there, how it's holding people back. And in the book, he basically said their culture and current lack of work ethic is what's holding people back, not government. But now in his speeches, he says, well, it was NAFTA. And I don't agree with that. But then again, you listen to the Democrats and it's like, Jesus, maybe some tariffs is the price worth paying, but everyone will make that decision for themselves.
No, it is. And in terms of trade-offs, right? As Thomas Sowell famously said, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. You're talking about the trade-offs of having right-wing industrial policy being better than left-wing industrial policy and higher taxes and more regulations and gender weighing and trans the kids and all of the woke garbage and critical theory that comes along with it. But I mean, in many ways, Maxim, our movement is sort of on the decline. We're sort of on our back foot. I wonder, if you've had conversations with John about this and how he feels about how the Tea parties have declined and like libertarianism itself has declined to a large extent. We're sort of scattered to the four winds. And in some sense, really the best we can do is sort of, stick it out with Trumpism because it's better a little bit on foreign policy, good on regulations and taxes. And like you said, it's a situation where it's certainly, a much lesser evil than the left, right?
Yeah, I certainly can't speak for John on that, but we've been covering all the candidates over on the Stossel TV YouTube page, and he's been interviewing RFK and the Libertarian candidate Oliver. And yeah, I think our policy, we're just interviewing everyone, and people can make up their minds based on that. So
you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because I know you're a nice guy, Maxim. I have to. I'm not a nice guy, and also I like ratings and I like to have a large viewership, so I'm willing to dive into controversy. But are you impressed with the Libertarian Party's candidate this year?
I'm not very familiar with him, but I have. Yeah, I'm not familiar enough to comment on that. But what's your take, Austin? You're the mean guy here.
Yeah, no, I'll say this, that it does seem as if the Libertarian Party has put up possibly the weakest candidate and the one least plugged in to the zeitgeist at the moment. Like if you were looking for a candidate that could sort of match the energy of what's happening right now, probably Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to some extent might have been a better candidate, even though he's far less of a doctrinaire libertarian. I mean, he himself, and we haven't talked about him at all, but I mean, he's making a name for himself this year as sort of the independent third party candidate. And, the libertarians can't compete. Not that they ever could, but I mean, it does feel as if the party has lost the plot, if I will. And Chase Oliver sort of has taken, at least on the cultural side of things, he seems to be on the side of the people that tear down statues. He seems to be on the side of the critical theorists. He seems to be on the side. I mean, his position when it comes, for example, to the transgender question is not that is to say on one hand that we should ban surgeries life-altering surgeries for kids, but they should be able to chemically sterilize themselves, which I find to be, oxymoronic to a large extent. So my prediction, if I were to make one for this coming election, Maxim, is that the Libertarian Party will get the lowest vote total that it has seen since 1992 when Ross Perot took office. And certainly Robert F. Kennedy Jr. probably not going to hit Ross Perot territory, but he is gaining. And Maxim, I'm guessing, maybe you have an opinion on this, I'm guessing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. probably takes more out of Trump than he does from Kamala, doesn't he?
Yeah, especially when Biden was running, it looked like it was about even, but now I think he's definitely pulling more from Trump. Yeah, I will say about third parties in general, I've always been a little skeptical because the U.S. electoral system is really set up for two parties. And if you have a third party, it draws from whoever's closest to them. So that's pretty costly in terms of if you have a ideology you're supporting, you're pulling from whoever's closest. It can make sense because you'll force that party to be more like yours to not lose votes. But then again, maybe they lose electoral standing with moderates or something. Then it's very complicated. In general, I think third party doesn't pay off in America. We should get ranked choice voting, though, and then it'll be more feasible.
Yeah, what I've read about ranked choice voting, if we had pure ranked choice voting, that would be superior, but they always water it down or they create some sort of twisted version of it whenever they try and implement it. And it never seems to be the kind of ranked choice voting that we would hope for in our dreams. But you never know. At some point, all of us probably just really do need to move to New Hampshire. Maxim, is there anything that we missed or any important topics that you wanted to cover or hit before we let you go today? Maybe plug something?
Let's see. I think that's most of it. Yeah, on electionbettingodds.com, we're tracking this every 5 minutes. So if this is the time of year, this is when I'm addicted to my own website. And the regulatory situation around betting is also interesting and depends on the election because the federal regulators at the CFTC have said that they're planning on completely banning election betting within the US. And it's a formal proposed regulation. They'll implement it probably early next year. And if Trump wins, that's a lot less likely to actually happen. If Kamala Harris wins, I see 90% that it will, although then people will fight it in court. But this is just probably one of 1,000 regulations that will depend on the election outcome.
Maxim Lot from Maximum Truth. You can follow him over on x.com at Maxim Lot. That's L-O-T-T. Hey, Maxim, thanks so much for coming on this morning, being so generous with your time. We appreciate your insight.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to see you, Austin.
You too, Maxim. Take care. Come back soon. All right. So make sure you follow him. He's a great follow over on X. Again, at Maxim Lot, L-O-T-T-M-A-X-I-M-L-O-T-T. There you go. Next up, we're going to speak to Remzo Martinez, far-right groups rioting in the United Kingdom after a deadly stabbing at a children's event in northwestern England. An array of online influencers, anti-Muslim protesters, and groups have stoked unrest and have burned businesses to the ground. We're going to speak to Remzo Martinez about all of that when we get back. Don't forget, Rumble rants and YouTube super chats today get you entered to win this beautiful Donald Trump t-shirt. So get in those Rumble rants, any amount will get you entered to win. We'll be right back with Remzo on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Wake Up America show looks at some of the most incredible. Morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Yeah, it's no longer just the Wake Up America show. It's the new For Liberty Network. Coming this fall, 2 brand new shows. I'm excited to announce and introduce to you a trio of shows, of podcasts. It's going to be me, Brian P. Otter, King Libertarian, and Daniela Pensack. They'll all have their shows put together for you this fall, so make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel so that you can get updates about the brand new podcasts that will be coming this fall. It's no longer just the For Liberty shop, it's the For Liberty Network. And thank you to Rumble and to Locals for helping us to facilitate it, and thank you, the listeners and viewers, for helping to make this network a reality. Without the financial contributions, the likes, the super chats, the shares, the comments, everything that you do to help us to grow has now built this show to where 2 years in, we're expanding new markets, new ideas, and we're very thankful for you for being a part of that. So before you leave today, make sure you click that follow button to say thank you, not only to me, but to Rumble for helping us to spread the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty. Immigration has always been a question where libertarians have had, well, a big question mark. It depends on who you ask, how they feel about it. But if you live in countries like the United Kingdom, or if you live in France and you see the people who are coming in with their very illiberal views when it comes to, in comparison to Western civilization, one might have to ask yourself, how long will people be able to tolerate those who move into liberal countries with their illiberal views? Well, riots in the United Kingdom have sparked an international debate about just how much Western countries can take in regards to immigration. In the last couple of days, protesters against immigration have burned down shops and attacked migrants on the street after a series of incidents occurred. Let's talk to an expert on such political topics as that and many other things. Remzo Martinez from AMP America joining us live this morning. Good morning, Remzo. Thanks for getting up, and sorry I screwed up the timing for you this morning, though. Thanks for being with us.
It's all good, Austin. A pleasure to be here.
Remzo, what is your take? I mean, of course, when you read the New York Times this morning, it's far-right fascist groups, anti-Muslim extremists. But of course, you can't forget that there was something that started these, like a deadly stabbing at a children's event. It's not like the George Floyd riots where like a fentanyl-laden crackhead was killed by a police officer, rightly or wrongfully. We're talking about innocent people getting attacked by people who really have no right to be in those countries. What's your big picture take on this, Remzo?
I mean, I even goes farther than that, going back the last decade. I mean, largely we can blame two people for this, for what's happening, not just in England, but what's happening globally. We can blame George W. Bush and we can blame Tony Blair, because it was the destabilization of the Middle East through the removal of Saddam Hussein. It was through U.S. intervention in the Middle East, and also what we saw in North Africa when we went ahead and helped facilitate the overthrowment of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. We shouldn't be surprised that when you go ahead and make certain places just horrible places to live, that people are going to flee. And for the most part, we've been able to stick this, especially in the rise of ISIS through the second term of Obama, through when it was finally decapitated and destroyed during year 2 of Trump. What we've seen is 30 million displaced people between 2003 and I think that when I pulled that number, it was 2021, 2022, 30 million displaced people. So there should be no surprise that we saw this mass migration. However, what we've been seeing in Europe, and you've been talking about this for more than a decade, in what we've seen in in the Finnish countries, in Denmark, and that part of Europe, in France, in Spain. My parents are recently in Barcelona, and they were walking down through certain portions of the city, and they thought that they were in North Africa. You're starting to see this in Berlin, in Germany, where you have these mass North African and Middle Eastern migrant camps that have just become, like giant hotbeds of drugs and pimping and prostitution and grooming gangs. It's become horrible. And what we're seeing is a deadly alliance that I brought up actually in my book, Stay Away from the Libertarians, because before it was called woke, I called it the victim hierarchy, in which it's like, okay, the left is going to have to go ahead and fight between whether or not they care more about the LGBTQ crowd or whether or not they care more about Muslims, because those two things, as Bill Maher would constantly say, they don't work out. They don't see each other as truly equals. So now what you have is you have the woke agenda, which is trying to push white, straight, typically Christian men out of society in England, and they're trying to replace them with everyone else. Part of that replacement segment is with North African and Middle Eastern migrants, primarily from Pakistan. I think it was Gavin Wax from the New York Republicans Club who went ahead and said that England is basically a colony of Pakistan now. So is this something that just popped up overnight? Anyone that's pretending that history started yesterday is completely ignorant. But what I see right now happening is less about the riots themselves. It's what this is going to be used to justify later. It's been 4 years since January 6th. We know largely that it was a false flag operation set up by the FBI. Yet the right, the American right, outside of Trump rallies, has been neutered. It's been castrated. You see that. Now compare it to what we're seeing right now, where people are actually taking to the streets, and now you have Muslim patrols going after white people. It's turning into a race war before our eyes, a literal race war. And according to the prime minister, he's going to use the fullest extent of the law to go after right-wing thuggery. You went ahead and referenced, when we were coordinating for this topic last night, a tweet from Will Chamberlain. He said that this is going to be January 6 on crack, to paraphrase, because he's a lawyer and he says things more smartly than I do. But I completely agree. I think that what we're going to see is a woke totalitarian England, which is then going to have a war between the woke and the Muslims. It's just coming down to those lines. London is largely a Muslim city now. So you go ahead and take the woke agenda and you try and put that up with Sharia, the white, straight male Christians and all the Western liberal values and everything, push that to the side. It's going to get so much worse because once they go down, now it's just going to be a power to, it's going to be a power vacuum to fill. And whoever fills it, it doesn't really matter because it's still going to turn out horrible for everybody.
Remzo, the immigration issue, always a hotly debated topic, but so much has changed since the 1990s until today. And yes, you could say that foreign policy and the wars of the Middle East and of Europe and Asia have caused much of the refugees fleeing to safer harbors. And to some extent, neoconservatives who are responsible for that would argue, well, we broke it, we bought it, meaning that if we're going to bomb these countries, then we have a certain responsibility to take some of these migrants in who have been displaced from the chaos and violence that has been inflicted by NATO allied countries. But then when you look at the question of like the open borders types, they'll say things like, well, depending on their foreign policy, that, Iraq has a right to have their own country, to have their own sovereignty, but then they won't necessarily apply that same thing to the United States or the UK or France. I mean, and again, overlapping hypocrisies. You look at, the white Europeans who moved to the United States. We conquered the Native Americans. We conquered the Indians. And this is our country now. And I don't tend to look back with any kind of shame or guilt about what my ancestors did to conquer the American continent. So some people could say, well, let's compare what Muslims are doing in the UK or in France to just like the European migrants who moved into the United States and what they did to conquer those nations. You could compare it to that in such a way. So in a sense, you might be a hypocrite by saying, oh, well, it's okay when we do it. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself this question is, should France be able to determine who is a Frenchman and who can come to their country and who can set up shop there? And should that be based on some kind of ethnic heritage, right? Or not? Should the United Kingdom be able to have an immigration policy that protects heritage Britons, right? Noting that, immigration of William the Conqueror in 1066 at the Battle of Hastings means that most British today are really Frenchmen anyway. I mean, these are kind of the overlapping hypocrisies and historic questions that we have to deal with when ultimately asking the question that I'm asking you, Remzo, is should there be some sort of a official governmental protection for countries to maintain their cultural and ethnic ancestry?
Do you remember he used to be way more popular like 5-6 years ago? Do you remember Michael Savage?
Oh, yeah.
On the radio.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. He used to be big. He was one of the first people that got really canceled, especially he was big in the, DMV, Maryland, DC, Virginia market, WMAL. Then he got replaced by Larry O'Connor. I mentioned that because like 10 years ago, Michael Savage's, and it's still his big thing. His thing was language, culture, borders. As a young libertarian, I'm like, you're just a racist. And I'm just like thinking all these things about it. But the older I get and the more I understand about the world, I'm like, shoot, like Michael Savage really was on to something. And to touch on what you mentioned earlier of, like U.S. history and everything else, it comes down to this. It's the conquest ethic. You take it, it's yours. As much as it may have been, the Spaniards and everyone else, invading the Aztec Empire and everything, as much as they may not have had the right to take it over, at least they were open about it with swords, guns, steel, and germs. But I would also say that, the Aztecs and everyone else had the right to defend themselves. If you lose, you lose. It comes in that situation. But the problem is, at least those conquests, I would say they were honest. I would say they were honest in the fact that everyone knew the intention. Everyone saw what was happening. No one was really unclear that, someone is going to wind up on top. And if it's not us, it's them at that point. What we're witnessing right now is mass migration. And when it's coming from Pakistan, when it's coming from a lot of these countries, when we were seeing it with Syria and Iraq and the Levant and everything else, when ISIS was happening, what did we see? We saw military aged men crossing borders into Europe. And this might piss some people off, but frankly, mass migration is a form of jihad. So they're trying to say it's not a religious thing. And when it comes to what you're seeing with, the native Englishmen, they're being told, oh, don't treat this like a religious thing. Ask any Muslim whether they make their decisions based off their religion solely or not. And they'll almost always say, oh, of course, I have to go back to the Quran. I have to go back to, all these other things. It's almost always that. And when we hear it, we're like, oh, it's just their thing. When anyone else has to apply that, it's a completely different situation. Am I justifying certain actions? No. But what I am saying is understand that what we're witnessing is a clear invasion of Europe. It's clearly happening. When they started playing the call to player, the call to prayer in Union Station in London and stuff like that, that wasn't just something that just randomly happened. Now, people say, well, we're a liberal society. We're, democratic and all these things. And I'm not saying be intolerant, but what I am saying is that when you start seeing the institutions and the culture and the people who facilitated this openness start to get pushed out by people who are openly intolerant and will use the law to the fullest extent to push intolerance, what does that tell you? You're being forced out. You're being forced out by people that don't like you. And what we're seeing in England is what we're seeing in Ireland. To see the IRA walk in the streets with Protestants in Ireland, where the housing crisis has gotten bad, where the rapes are skyrocketing, where the violence on the streets are skyrocketing, and it's almost exclusively because of the boat migrants who are just showing up to shore. I'm sorry, and I say this as somebody who was born and raised in a border town in Arizona. If your first act in another country is to commit a crime, you do not respect that country. Plain and simple.
So
it's about language, culture, and borders. If we do not have those things, we do not have a country. Countries are more than just self-sustaining economies.
Wow. That's a really powerful statement there, Remzo. I want to get your take on something else here related to this. I'm going to throw out a term here in just a minute, which has been called a racist conspiracy theory by the left. The New York Times, if you go to the Wikipedia articles, it's widely associated with Nazis and with Nick Fuentes, Groyper types. But Vivek Ramaswamy used this term in the last year, which caused quite a stir amongst the left because he's not a white guy. And he said something similar to what you were just talking about. And the term is called the Great Replacement Theory, which if you use in the mainstream media, they will instantly dub you a Nazi. They'll say you're the second coming of Adolf Hitler if you bring it up. Do you believe then, Remzo, that it is a deliberate strategy by the left and by believers in Islam to replace white Europeans and white Americans from their country as part of a deliberate overall strategy?
Absolutely. And they've been gaslighting conservatives about this for decades. People try and say that like in North American political lexicon, it started with like Pat Buchanan. I would say that it's been something that more people have addressed over the decades. And I saw a documentary about like Muslims in Sweden, and you had this female Muslim professor who was saying, the Swedes, they have a sense of humor I don't like, and they lack diversity. We need to change that here to make them more open and diverse. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? And the reporter asks too, like, what does that mean? And they're like, we need to go ahead and bring in more Muslim, more Middle Eastern, North African people to Sweden. That's what it comes down to. In Northern Virginia, when I moved there to Fairfax County in 2008, and I lived there until 2021, it was largely Korean immigrants. You had a lot of Pakistani Indians, primarily Indians, because Indians and Pakistanis don't like to live around each other. You had the Vietnamese, and you had Mexicans. You didn't really have, the OTMs, the other than Mexicans, the El Salvadorians, the Guatemalans, and stuff like that. But something shifted over the years. And in my neighborhood, it was primarily English-speaking people. And when I went back to visit my family in the same neighborhood, I just went on a walk throughout the neighborhood. I did not hear English at all. Now, that in and of itself isn't a problem. The problem is that you used to know where people worked. You used to, have a community identity. People, and this is I think, a problem with America, and people are going to take this really badly, but there's no other way to say it. We've become so hyper individualized to look at the benefits of strong individualism that we have sacrificed community as a result of that. And we don't know who our neighbors are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know what their intentions are. A lot of people here are not here to be citizens. They're not here to take part of the great American experience. They're here for economic reasons, which in and of itself is not a problem. I don't have an issue with that. But when you start to deteriorate the things that kept people together and kept people amicable and friendly and wanting to associate with each other, you create a society of folks that are paranoid. And it's that paranoia that breeds, intolerance and all these other things that the left typically focuses on. And that is what we've established. What we're seeing is that when they try and, they've even said this with Ukraine. They're like, we will have to go ahead and replace the male population of Ukraine. And I'm like, okay, with who? And they have mentioned, well, we have all these people in Europe. We'll take them to Ukraine. It's like, oh, so what you want to do is you want to go ahead and just replace people wholeheartedly. You want to go ahead and make them compliant. You want to go ahead and make them in a situation where they're dependent, where they're more than likely to push your agenda. It's not a lie. It's happening. Most of these leftists are open about it. They want to go ahead and replace anyone who is, ethnically, racially white, Christian. It goes beyond just we need to go ahead and open the floodgates and be tolerant. It's like some cultures are not compatible. Like, that's the thing. And if they're not compatible, if we cannot agree to live with each other, we have to at least learn how to exist with each other.
I'm speaking to Remzo Martinez. This is a great conversation, and I'm glad that you're all here for it. Remzo Martinez works at AMP America. I write a weekly column for the website, ampamerica.com. If you haven't checked it out, make sure that you're following Remzo over on x.com at Hey Remzo. We're talking a little bit about immigration, and this is sparked by the news that 2 days of rioting had occurred in the United Kingdom after migrants stabbed a child in the United Kingdom. Right-wing groups took to the streets and attacked migrants and burned down some of their civil centers. We're talking this morning about the problems of immigration here in the United States and around the world, and some of the theories for why this might be happening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. You can text the show if maybe you have a question for Remzo or myself on this topic, or a comment that you'd like to share. You can text us at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open at 573-319-1586. Let us know what's on your mind. So, Remzo, it's kind of this kind of a paradox in the sense that we, you were talking about living in a liberal culture such as we have. We've gotten perhaps too overly individualized. We've lost our sense of community or our sense of culture. I mean, to some extent, the Islamic culture doesn't have that problem because they very much act in solidarity or in lockstep. You have societies like Japan, where the foreigners that live there is extremely low. It's an extremely homogenous society, and they all tend to march in lockstep. You don't really even need the government to tell anyone what to do in Japan, because all they had to do is just issue some protocols for coronavirus that didn't have any effective law, and everybody there just follows the rules and follows the law and goes along. In the United States, we've never had a homogenous society. In the United States, we've always had, to some extent, what they called a melting pot, and it just used to be that the heterogeneity was amongst Irish Catholics versus Scottish Protestants, or English Protestants, and so the conflicts were at least manageable to some extent. But when you say that some cultures aren't compatible, it's hard to quantify that, because you're looking at different cultures across the United States. Regionally, the United States is quite different. For example, and you know this quite well, Remzo, you're a traveled man, conservative Republicans in New York City are not the same as conservative Republicans in Jefferson City, right? There's differences even amongst, like, white people don't act in solidarity in the United States, and they don't do that in the United Kingdom. So it's like, how are we really going to build any kind of a sense of a community or any kind of a sense of homogeneity, right? Or to build some kind of a cultural solidarity when we never really had that in the United States. I mean, if you could look at any period in the United States when there might have been that the culture was as united as it was, I mean, what would you say? The era of good feelings after the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists were stopping trying to kill each other, like maybe for the 5 minutes after the Civil War, right before Abraham Lincoln got shot in the head. I mean, what are the historical examples here of like solidarity amongst groups that we culturally identify with that could sustain us to prevent the invasion and the destruction of our cultures, Remzo? Big question. You may not have an answer, but I'd be curious how you would think about that.
I'm going to have to pull an answer from Vince Vaughn. It was like the late 80s through early 90s. It was when we could make fun of each other. It was when people were making money. It was when, we thought that a lot of the big issues of our generations were finished. I mean, yeah, you had like the LA riots and stuff like that. But largely, when you largely look at it, at least from people who are alive today, they look back at the 90s and they're like, people kind of chilled out. Like we still had problems, but like people chilled out, and people for the most part liked this country. I said this on Lions of Liberty of John Odermatt recently. I'm like, when did people just start like explicitly hating America? You could disagree with things, you could dislike your government, but it was like an abject hatred for this country, which I always felt was just so misplaced. And I felt like it was being done intentionally by some people. But we're seeing this in Minnesota right now. You have some city councils for some towns in Minnesota that are majority Muslim. And what they did during Pride Month was they actually banned the pride flag from public view on public and private property. They actually put out an ordinance for that. Now, I might not like seeing a pride flag fly at a post office, but on your own business, on your own home, if you want to put up a pride flag, I 100% support your right to do that. So right there, what you have is, you could say it draws on religious lines. You can't really say in that case it draws on racial lines, but it comes on an idea of liberty. And largely, Muslim cultures are the most illiberal cultures in America. I'm sorry, in the world. Let me rephrase that. In the world, they are the most illiberal cultures, but they have a right to be as intolerant and horrible as they want to be. I'm not going to go to Saudi Arabia or Qatar and Dubai and expect to have them completely conform to me, a non-citizen, somebody who does not share their language, culture, and religion, and expect them to conform to me. But in America, we just kind of take that head on, and we deal with that as we're seeing it in Europe right now, where it's like people can come and they do not have to conform, and the idea of having them conform is somehow horrible. My mom's family came to the United States from Seoul, Korea, and the first thing they did was they learned English, and the first thing they did was they became citizens. They came through the right way, and my father's first language is Spanish and my mom's first language is Korean. You know what we spoke in our house? We spoke English. And that was done explicitly, because if we're going to be of this country, if we're going to be citizens of this country, we need to speak the language of this country. And I would never go anywhere else and force conformity of the residents to me. I moved to Wisconsin and I left Virginia because I saw an incompatible culture. I saw that the electorate was going one way and I saw that the culture was going another way. And I cannot live amongst these people. I could not afford to live amongst these people, because what we were having, and some people call this a communist term, we were having a post-capitalist state where the middle class is being shrunk. It was not, though, however, because of free markets. It was because of government-induced monopolies. So what are you having? You're having, super rich migrants and you're having super poor migrants. And I'm not just talking overseas. Amazon HQ2 was a form of intentional mass migration from the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. You have the super wealthy liberal elites who came into Virginia for Amazon HQ2. And what they brought was they brought a higher standard of living and liberal voting. That's another thing. And the majority of them are white. So you look at this, I moved to a place where it's like I can afford to live. It's largely Christian. It's largely blue collar, middle class. People like this country. It's not explicitly always racially or religiously. Sometimes it's just about ideas. And that's the beautiful thing about this country. If you want to go ahead and live in Gavin Newsom's hellscape, go to California. But as I'm telling people, it's like I came here not to change Wisconsin, but to embrace Wisconsin. I want to make Wisconsin great again. So I moved and I stayed. I conformed because I agreed.
Hey, Remzo, on another topic, out there in Pennsylvania, our buddy Cliff Maloney is chasing ballots like you wouldn't believe. I saw some scary polling numbers out there for Donald Trump if Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, becomes Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. It's definitely an important state. How are things going out there for Cliff? How do you feel about the state of the race so far? Kamala versus Biden at this point. What's going on out there in Pennsylvania, and what are your thoughts?
Well, in Pennsylvania, what we saw was that Cliff, Scott Presler, Tyler Boyer, the PA Chase, early vote action, Turning Point Action, all the right people, all the good people you want on your side. They went ahead and flipped Butker County, which had historically been a Democrat stronghold. They went ahead and flipped that strong R heading into the election just so far through the decade ballots that they've been able to secure for folks. We're seeing that largely the Philadelphia suburbs are going red for the first time in I think 3 decades. The issue with with Shapiro is that if we're playing in Pennsylvania, which we are, if we have an incumbent governor who people are going up against, that's going to cause a pretty big problem. I think that is a big stressor point for people. I think Shapiro is going to go ahead and take more of the independent votes that were probably leaning towards Trump when it was Biden. And when you go ahead and flip it to Kamala, which is another factor, but then you go ahead and add Shapiro to that, I think that puts Pennsylvania in the state of play that we don't want right now, because the path to the White House and all the strategists, all the smart people, all the people you want to hear from, they're all saying it has to go through Pennsylvania. Trump does not win without Pennsylvania. Bashir in Kentucky really doesn't bring much. He brings the archetype, but it's one of those situations where I think Cliff Maloney went ahead and brought this up, and he has a phrase I love, which is the great theft of 2024, which is this idea that they're stealing the truth from you, telling you that these are moderates, that these are like working class moderates. But no, these are extremely radical leftists. We saw how they acted during the pandemic. We saw how they acted after that. We know how they are on the most radical of issues, whether it's Shapiro, Bashir, Mark Kelly, them plus Kamala creates the most leftist ticket in political history. And the thing that bugs me about Kamala, to flip onto that, is that people are looking at the enthusiasm polls from just a couple of weeks, and they're looking at, women who were always largely a voting bloc that were voting Democrat. They're looking at independents. They're looking at millennials. You can also tell a lot about people by how they treat JD Vance. The amount of hatred that man receives, the amount of just sheer hatred that man receives. People need to step back and think about this, because I was a never Trump guy in 2016. Why? Because I just believed everything for face value. I believe that people might have bad intentions, but they're going to be factually honest about a lot of things. I have not believed that since then. I have not believed that at any point, and I certainly don't believe that now. Now people who are like, oh, Kamala's 1 point ahead of Trump, everything is over. Look how, this wine ant doesn't like JD Vance. It's like, I think that if people, after everything has happened, are undecided, it's a lie. I think one of the biggest lies in America is the lie of the independent voter, is the lie of the undecided voter. If you have lived for more than 10 minutes in this country and you have not been hiding under a rock, you've known who you were going to vote for. So I think all we have to do is just ignore the bullshit. Don't take anything for granted. Sign up, make a plan to go vote, donate to causes like the Pennsylvania Chase at phchase.com and others. And don't let these psychopaths near any level of power. I see, I consider well-intentioned conservatives even saying, oh, I'm afraid that even if Trump wins, we'll result in civil war, we'll result in World War III, we'll result in all these things. People, it's happening right now. And we don't have to guess about Trump anymore. The guessing game about Trump, that whole argument has been false since he was president. We know how he was president. We know what he did at his best. We know what he did at his worst. I want that back. Millions of Americans want that back. And anyone that's playing, the penny stock vote game in terms of, well, this poll went ahead and said this, and Josh Shapiro, the moderate, and he might not be that bad. It's like, shut up. Shut up. Whereas Biden would say, come on, man.
Remzo Martinez of Vamp America. Anything else that we missed that you'd like to share with us or plug before we let you go today, friends?
Nah, this whole situation in England is gonna be horrifying. They, I don't know whether this was, agitated by MI5 or something. I'm not gonna play into any of that. But what they have right now is this is like, they're gonna combine this into be like their Charlottesville, their January 6th. But it's going to be a lot worse. Like, it's going to be bad because at least in America, we have something called the Constitution, which is written and codified. And while I say we live in a post-constitutional society, at least we still have that to argue with. The British don't have that. I think what we're going to see is 1984 V for Vendetta on crack.
Yeah, completely agree. Remzo Martinez of Amp America. Follow him over at X at Hey Remzo. Thanks a lot, Remzo. Thanks for being so generous, and sorry about the time confusion. Thanks for rolling with the punches today. We appreciate you very much.
All good, Austin. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause.
And you know what? I'm not so far away from that again, believe it or not. But if Biden gets in, the market will crash. And you know what? I'm not so far away from that again, believe it or not. But if Biden gets in, the market will crash. You know what?
If Biden gets in, the market will crash. Well, that came from
Biden gets in,
Kamala HQ. I guess we could say thank you to, I don't know why this keeps playing. There we go. That was from Kamala HQ. They were touting the strength of the stock market and posting that video of Donald Trump saying that if Biden gets in, the market will crash. Well, now the market has crashed. A stock market sell-off intensified around the world, sending NASDAQ 100 futures tumbling and volatility spiking to its highest levels since the COVID-19 pandemic. Painful turbulence started in Japan on Monday with the Nikkei 225 falling more than 12%. It's the worst one-day drop since the crash after Black Monday in 1987. Losses cascaded across South Korea, Europe, and the United States. Investors are dumping riskier securities and flocking to safety. The declines extended what it's been a dizzying few days on Wall Street, during which the year's most popular trades have been aggressively unwound. A sell-off in tech shares continued pre-market Monday, with Nvidia, Meta, and Apple each losing 9% or more. Concerns about a slowing U.S. economy are front and center for investors after job growth slowed in July. Investors are worried that the Federal Reserve has moved too slowly and will need to play catch-up in cutting rates. Around the world, investors rushed for the safety of the bond market. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield recently traded around 3.68%, down from over 4.1% a week ago, and on pace to settle at its lowest level in more than a year. The VIX, which is considered Wall Street's fear gauge, jumped to 65. That is the highest intraday level since the panic-induced coronavirus sell-off of March 2020. Treasury yields fell. Yields tied to the U.S. Treasury note fell the most as the yield curve continues to sharpen. Japanese stocks were among the hardest hit globally. The Nikkei saw its biggest one-day fall since 1987. South Korea's benchmark KOSPI sank 8%, and stocks Europe 600 fell more than 3%. The yen leapt against the dollar, amplifying a trade that started to take hold last month, and Bitcoin's price plunged to around $51,000. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. We're glad and thankful to have you here. We'll hope that you will become a regular guest of the Wake Up America show, and you can do so by clicking that follow button over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. We do get a lot of viewers over on X.com, and I am certainly grateful to have you over there. It's difficult to get people who are on one platform to transfer over to another. So, for example, I do see that 1,130 people are joining me live over on X.com. Can I just say thank you? And I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for listening to the Wake Up America show. Today might be the very first time that you're listening to the show. And if you've said to yourself as you've been listening to this program that you might like to be a regular viewer, my best recommendation to you is to join us over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. Excuse me, I'm talking while I'm burping. We do like to have fun as well and goof around on this show, as well as talking about the serious subjects that matter to you. If you've been looking for good coverage from a Liberty perspective to start your mornings off, then why don't you join us over at Rumble at AP4Liberty? That way you can participate in the live chat, we can make friends, and you can get updates whenever we go live, which is every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. It's a 2-hour live show, and it's a great way to start your day. The Wake Up America show, however, is not on its own. We actually are launching 2 brand new podcasts as part of what I call our new For Liberty Network. The For Liberty Network is a passion project that I have engaged in for the last almost 2 years. The Wake Up America show launched 2 years ago and started with an audience of around 25 to 30 people who would join us live in the mornings. And well, now we have over 1,200 and some odd people joining us live in the mornings. So things are going good. So I've decided to take some of my earnings and reinvest. And we're launching 2 brand new shows that will be live on Rumble and on Locals starting this fall. These 2 new shows, as yet to be named, although we did decide on the name for those programs this weekend. I cannot wait to introduce to you the great new content that we'll be producing as part of our Liberty Network. Nowhere else around the world is anybody doing quite what we're doing here at the For Liberty Network. So consider joining us over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. X, of course, is a great platform for free speech. Unfortunately, though, the live stream capability over there and our ability to interact with you as an audience member is severely limited over on X.com until they get their act together and build out something that actually is conducive to shows like these. So again, join us over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. That's rumble.com/AP4Liberty. Just a reminder, we are giving away some gifts and prizes today. If you've made a Rumble rant or a YouTube Super Chat donation to the show today, you are automatically entered to win one of our products from the from the For Liberty Shop store. It's a really nice soft shirt of the Donald Trump assassination attempt with his fist in the air, and you can see right here he's got the blood running down his face, and he's got it like an album cover with explicit lyrics. Definitely a very cool t-shirt, and it's a size large. So if you're interested in winning this t-shirt, then get your Rumble rant or YouTube Super Chat donations in before the end of the show. And if you are a monthly subscriber to our network, you are automatically entered to win a couple of stickers that we're giving away today as well. So we've got lots of gifts to give away by the end of the show. So you want to stick around to the end to find out if you've entered, to find out who the winners are. Okay? Okay, cool. Let's talk about some news that's not quite as, horrifying or terrifying as the U.S. stock markets. Vince Vaughn, one of my favorite actors, big Ron Paul guy, a libertarian in Hollywood, rare as hen's teeth. Vince Vaughn says that R-rated comedies aren't made anymore because the people in charge don't want to get fired. Quote, they overthink it. Fascinating. So Vaughn believes that Hollywood execs are too cautious nowadays when it comes to the financing of the R-rated comedies that helped launch his career. So Vaughn, popularly known for the film that made him famous, Swingers, of course, Old School as well, and Wedding Crashers. He shared his thoughts on the decline of some of the raunchier R-rated films during a recent appearance that he gave on the podcast Hot Ones. He said they just overthink it, the Hollywood execs, that is, and it's like, it's crazy. You get these rules like, if you did geometry and you said 87 degrees is a right angle, then all your answers are messed up instead of 90 degrees. So there became some idea or concept. They would say something like, you have to have an IP, you have to have an IP, right? So if you're wondering why Hollywood just keeps engaging in remake after remake and superhero movie after superhero movie, it's because Hollywood execs are just saying, you have to have an established intellectual property. So what that means is that new films that could be new intellectual properties don't get made because they don't want to take the risks. They want a guaranteed, which it makes sense from a capitalistic perspective. But then you really lose out on opportunities to make films that could end up being classics. That's why I don't really go to the theaters much anymore. I will say that there have been a couple of movies that I'm interested in seeing that I haven't seen yet. Have you guys seen the new movie Twisters? Apparently, it's a great film. I read a review of it on National Review magazine just last week. They're saying that it's definitely a good film, something for you to tune into. So Stephanie and I, if we can find an opportunity to get away with maybe find a babysitter, then we'll try and go see Twisters this summer. Vince Vaughn used the board game Battleship, which inspired that 2012 film of the same name. He used that as an example of Hollywood turning an intellectual property into a, quote, vehicle for storytelling, simply because it has a recognizable name. So people know what Battleship is. So let's just make a movie about it, right? Okay, right. But meanwhile, the intellectual property that he would see early in his career was shared life experiences, such as turning 16 or cutting school. I mean, remember the American Pie series before it was a series? American Pie and Road Trip, these were the movies that came out when I was in college. And sure, they were raunchy teen comedies and sex comedies and things like that. But you really don't see many movies like that anymore because Hollywood's afraid to take risks. Partially, I think that it has a lot to do with not just that they're afraid to lose money on an intellectual, something that doesn't already have an established IP, but when you see that Hollywood has these handlers for sex scenes and things like the intimacy coordinators, they call them, then you have to wonder if they're even capable of making those kinds of films anymore for fear of offending the left, which has become very sex negative in recent years. The modern version of feminism is what we call sex negative. Now, I know for the normies out there who are listening to me, you're wondering to yourself, no, what does sex negative mean? Okay, well, there's sex negative and there's sex positive. And if you are a part of a political movement, and that political movement is sex negative, then it typically takes a dim view of sex. Maybe it's more puritanical. You don't have to be like a Christian conservative to be sex negative, saying, oh, let's wait till marriage and don't be a whore and all this stuff, right? You can be a leftist, who hates men and, is a childless cat lady or a wine ant or whatever you want to be. And that could be sex negative, right? And Hollywood very much has become sex negative. It used to be that you saw lots of boobs in Hollywood movies. That's part of the reason why you would go to the movies, especially when you were 16 or 17 and maybe you weren't supposed to, right? But now things have changed. The left has become more sex negative. So you don't see the same kinds of depictions of sexuality that you used to see perhaps in the 1980s, which is, just libidinous romps, like that movie that I was playing a little bit in the beginning, Road Warrior, not Road Warrior, but not Road Rage. What the hell am I talking about? What's the name of the movie with Patrick Swayze? For the love of God, Austin, you're getting old. The people in charge, Vince Vaughn says, don't want to get fired more so than they're looking to do something great. So they want to kind of follow a set of rules that somehow get set in stone that don't really translate. But as long as they follow them, they're not going to lose their job because they could say, well, look, I made a movie off the board game Payday. So even though the movie didn't work, you can't let me go, right? Vaughn had said, though, that he is hopeful that films similar to R-rated comedies from the 1990s and early 2000s will return to the big screen. People want to laugh. They want to, people want to laugh. People want to look at stuff that feels a little bit like it's, dangerous or pushing the envelope, he said. I think you're going to see more of it in the film space sooner than later, would be my guess. You can watch his full interview on the podcast Hot Ones. Vince Vaughn catches a hot streak while eating hot wings. Great interview there with someone who I really admire in Hollywood. I definitely think that the puritanical left, being sex negative, has had a major negative impact on Hollywood. It really is a shame because it used to be the height of our culture and something that the United States used to be very proud of. Especially in the 1980s and the 1990s, which I would say was probably a bit of a second golden age of American Hollywood. If you consider films like The Matrix, if you think about films like Gladiator and so many other epics that were made from the 1980s and the 1990s, they say they don't make them like they used to. That certainly is the case when it comes to films from the 1980s or the 1990s. Think about all of the practical effects that used to be used to make films in the 1980s before digital animation took over and everything just became, Captain Poopy Farts fighting major, dippy-doo in the sky against one another with bolts of lightning striking them. I know that people really love superhero movies. And as somebody who grew up watching Superman with, the actor Dang, Austin, your brain is really slow this morning. It's the new baby. The sleep schedule is kind of messing with me. But Clark Kent, Superman, the original one from the 1980s. What was the actor? Broke his neck. I was in a wheelchair for a number of years. For the love of God, somebody save me. Well, anyways, movies like that, superhero movies used to have practical effects, and they're just, I don't know, it just felt like a sense of danger. There's something about the fearfulness that a puppet inspired when you would watch a movie like Ghoulies or when you watch a movie like Critters, because when you saw it, even if it was a puppet or it felt like a Jim Henson creation, there was something just so much more terrifying about that. Whenever I see an animated monster, Christopher Reeves, thank you, Steven. Yes, God, I'm stupid. I just don't get scared ever. I mean, maybe it's because I'm an adult and I've lost my sense of whimsy, but what is frightening about cartoon monsters when you're watching them in a film? There's nothing about that strikes me as particularly horrifying. And maybe I really shouldn't have been scared by little ghouly puppets, but there was something about the fact that they would be all greased up with like oils dripping off of them and things like that. That was just, I don't know. It felt more terrifying. It felt more real. And I appreciated those much more. Christopher Reeves, everybody's reminding me how stupid I am. Terrible joke. What's the opposite of Christopher Reeves? I don't know. Let us know, Stephen. Let us know. Whitey White says it's not about money. It's about the destruction of the West. Probably true. They use money to get power in order to do it. They have been successful in their agenda. There we go. The opposite of Christopher Reeves is Christopher Walken. Oh, no.
No, God.
All right, Stephen. First of all,
How dare you?
And second of all, you're canceled. Thanks so much for tuning into the Wake Up America show. It's giveaway time. Are you guys ready? Here we go. All right, let's take a look. All right, who has made donations? We've got 1, 2, 3. Looks like 4 people who have made donations this morning to be entered in to win, and I'm going to pick them at random. Let's give the T-shirt to Mighty Megatron. Yes, Mighty Megatron, you are the winner. So here's the deal, Mighty Megatron. If you want to get your shirt, you have to send me your address. So send me a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. You are the winner of the Donald Trump album cover T-shirt. Text me at 573-319-1586. Give me your name, your phone number, and your email address. Give me everything so I can include all the tracking information and all that stuff in there, as well as the address to send it to, okay? Don't leave anything out because we don't want to have it get sent back, okay? Congratulations, Mighty Megatron. Thanks for being a supporter of the show. Now we've got another giveaway. This is for monthly supporters of the Wake Up America show. If you are a monthly contributor to the show, then you are automatically entered to win prize drawings. And we're going to give away a couple of stickers today that are of your choice from the For Liberty shop. So choosing at random those who are subscribed to the Wake Up America show. How do I subscribe to the Wake Up America show? You go to forlibertyshop.com, or you go to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. You can sign up there, or you can be a subscriber on Rumble or on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Everybody gets entered to win. Today's winner of the stickers from the shop of your choice is LDub78. There you go. LDub78. You get to go to For Liberty shop. You pick out 2 stickers. You tell me what size that you want them in. And you send me your name, your address, phone number, email address. Send me everything so I can put it all in the tracking information. You can track it. But congratulations to LDubs. You are the winner. Sweet. So if you've wanted to support the Wake Up America show for some time, but you haven't decided, then today's would be a good day to do it. Head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com and click on the support button and become a monthly subscriber today, or you can do so right here on Rumble. Congratulations to LDub78. Let me know what stickers you want. And congrats to Mighty Megatron. You are the winner of today's T-shirt. So we'll send that out in the mail once we get your information on the text line. It's already Monday. We already made it through the first part of our day. I hope that the rest of your day goes smashingly. We hope that you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you right back here again tomorrow. If you haven't clicked the like button yet on the feed, make sure that you do that. Come back here and join us again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central. We got lots more fun for you on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to wake up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP4Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at ap4libertyshop.com.